It's all about the Chinese Grand Prix that went down over the weekend, and for Oscar Piastri, he led Lando Norris to a dominant McLaren 1-2 finish in the Chinese Grand Prix ahead of George Russell's Mercedes. Piastri's victory made it 2 wins from 2 for McLaren at the start of the season, following Norris's outstanding drive in the wet in Melbourne last weekend, talking about the Australian Grand Prix. Now, the Australian led from pole and lost first place only briefly in the period around the leaders' only pit stops. Piastri was rarely more than 4 seconds ahead of Norris, but always in control. Now, Norris was struggling with fading brakes in the closing laps, but had enough of an advantage to hold Russell at bay. The result leaves Norris leading the championship by 8 points from Verstappen, with Russell a further point adrift, and of course Piastri one behind Russell. I've got Soliu Adeyemo, a Formula One expert, joining us on the show, and I saw his post on social media, and of course I do not know if he's supporting Hamilton this season or not, but of course welcome to the show, Soliu. Good to have you with us.
Good afternoon, Doka. It's my pleasure to be here with you guys.
Thank you very much. We saw the Australian Grand Prix last weekend. That was the first race of the season, and it was a topsy-turvy one for the Ferrari, because we can actually say they drove on wet conditions. But of course, Lewis Hamilton knows how to drive in wet conditions, but it didn't happen for him to finish at the podium last week. Now we saw the Chinese Grand Prix, a disaster for Lewis Hamilton. We will get to that point of Lewis Hamilton, but for McLaren, Lando Norris, it looks like they are very serious this season in the Formula One. They want to claim the championship.
I mean, beyond being serious, I know Udoka is also about the statement that McLaren are making so far. I mean, last season we all saw how they gave Red Bull a run for their money, especially with the late surge by Lando Norris, who actually put up a very good performance last season. And this season, it appears like it is, if it is not Red Bull, so definitely it was going to be McLaren. And McLaren, I mean, came up with a very good plan, especially with the car, talking about the MCL39. I mean, there's a challenger for the year 2025, which appears to be miles ahead in terms of, I mean, for ahead of the field, ahead of the track that is now of other teams. And also going by what Andrea Stella talking about McLaren principal has said, it's, I mean, yes, it's not shared to rule, but if you ask me, if it's one team that appears to be blazing the trail in the year 2025, it's definitely the McLaren with their MCL39. I mean, last weekend we saw how they started in Australia when Lando Norris put up that good performance in the wet. But again, Oscar Piastri came to the fore when everything was fine. And after the race, Oscar Piastri was quick to acknowledge the fact that yes, this is a disservice one for him. This is like a compensation for what he should have achieved last weekend. You know, it would have been an incredible race for him. It would have been an incredible victory for him if he had won in Australia at some grand. Talking about the young Australian Oscar Piastri, a third win in his record in his Formula One entries, right? But this one is a very good one for him. It's a 1-2 finish for McLaren, and I dare tell you that we should be prepared to witness as many as these outcomes in the year 2025, because when you look at it, MCL3 now appear to be ahead of Mercedes W16 and also even Red Bull in terms of the RB16 right there. I mean RB23, that is, so right there. And for Ferrari, I mean, quite a lot of troublesome weekend for them. Really, you expect that Ferrari should be making a surge. Talking about Lewis Hamilton and also Charles Leclerc.
All right, but can we, 2 races I know it has gone down already, but can we say that the McLaren would definitely challenge this season for the championship title, and maybe the Mercedes as well, because I know Lewis Hamilton complained about the Mercedes, but now it looks like they're getting their grinds together. So can we say it is a battle between McLaren, Mercedes, and maybe the Red Bull?
It's quite difficult to look at the order, Udoka. I mean, the only clear order that we established now is talking about McLaren order. And this order didn't just trump up. It's not something that just trump and come into our faces, right? It is something that has been there towards the end of last season. I mean, if not for the fact that Max Verstappen abused a lot of space, a lot of gap last season. I mean, last year that was the less improvement. Talking about McLaren at that point, it should have been a different story entirely. Talking about 2024, and the good thing is that we're able to maintain that momentum. I mean, mind you, we came into this year with limited improvement that the teams could do to their cars. So which means we are coming into the season is that the order with which they finished last season. Now, in terms of the other parts, this Mercedes, I'm looking at that Mercedes W16. It doesn't look like a car for me that I can challenge for the title. But maybe for second spot, especially with what George Russell is doing, I mean, what he's putting up in that particular car. And I'm looking at Ferrari as well. It doesn't look convincing as well. You look at Red Bull. Red Bull seems to be having a problem that they inherited from last season to this season, and it's not looking like they're even interested in this season. When you listen to what Max Verstappen said after the race, he just wants to enjoy himself of this season with no pressure. So that speaks, and that is something that gives you a little insight into what is going on in that Red Bull garage at this moment.
All right, let's talk about the Ferrari now. Charles Leclerc drove an outstanding race in the Ferrari with a damaged front wing, faster than his teammate Lewis Hamilton, who moved out of his way. But of course, the pair were disqualified after the race for separate technical infringements, along with Alpine's Pierre Gasly. Now, the first race, Lewis Hamilton struggled, and the second one, another struggle. There was a time when Lewis Hamilton didn't listen to the calls from his team, and that caused him to be disqualified from the race. Major struggle for Lewis Hamilton this season. We shouldn't expect anything. Is that what you think?
It's going to be very hard. I never tip Hamilton to do anything meaningful with Ferrari this season. Probably next year we should be looking at Hamilton. In fact, when you look at that project that brought Hamilton into Ferrari, the project was not for 2025. The project was for 2026, where we are going to be having raft of changes in terms of the technical regulation and also the technical regulation to the cars, where we are going to be raft of changes that will give teams the opportunity to be able to develop their cars from the scratch, and which means that whatever form that we've established this year will not count for next year. And I think the plan is for 2026, not for 2025 for Lewis Hamilton. But when you look at what it has been in terms of performance, I think he finished 11th. The last race, the penultimate race in Australia. And this time around, where he thought he had a very good, decent finish as well. And boom, we had this technical disqualification by the FIA. What has Lewis Hamilton been disqualified for? It's quite laughable, Udoka. It's quite laughable. And I'm surprised. And at the same time, I am confused as to whether Ferrari are not aware of this particular infraction by Lewis Hamilton, talking about the skid wear to his car. A skid wear is like a tiny object, talking about the plank, when you talk about the planky part of the car, which is supposed to be some measurement. But Hamilton cars, after the race, after the examination of the race, appear to have flouted that particular technical regulation of the FIA, and he was disqualified immediately, talking about Lewis Hamilton. And for Charles Leclerc, another Ferrari driver, what was disqualified for? The weight of his car. There's a technical regulation that speaks to the weight of the car. That has to do with the mass and all that, which is supposed to be around 10 millimeter or 10 kg or thereabout. But what happened is that Charles Leclerc also falls short of that. But this is not strange, really. This is not the first time we'll be having a driver being disqualified for the weight of the car. If you remember, if you cast your mind back to last year, at the Belgian Grand Prix, where we had the case of another Mercedes driver, it was even more painful at that time. At that point, at the Belgian Grand Prix, where George Russell, Mercedes driver, a partner to Hamilton at that time, thought he had won a Grand Prix in Belgium, and after, when he went for the weight, the car was also disqualified. That was just in July in Belgium, and now we're having this one coming from Ferrari. It is quite amusing, really, and also confusing that two Ferrari drivers in a race have been found by the FIA, and Ferrari could not even defend them, which shows that it was a just call by the FIA. And it also speaks to the mindset of Ferrari for this season. If possible, I do think that Ferrari will just say they want to sit out this particular season. They want to sit it out and also prepare for the next season, but they just have to compete because it doesn't appear like their mind is here and it's something that they want to do. So it's just advantage for McLaren at the point that they are doing well. Ferrari seems to be struggling, not just in terms of the driver's performance, but also in terms of the performance of those behind the pit wall who are making the calls, and also to ensure that they do all they have to do. So Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc and also Ferrari, it was just a weekend to forget for them right there in China.
You know, before I let you go, let me ask you this last one now. So last season, you talk about the project with Lewis Hamilton is built for 2026, not 2025. Now, last season, the Ferrari, I think, as not to be corrected, they finished second on the Constructors' Championship title. Now, they finished second. Don't you think it would be a failed project this year if they do not even get to the first, second, or third finish on the Constructors' Championship race?
I think it would be unfair. It would be unfair to call it a failed project for Ferrari because if you understand the way F1 works, the way it works is that a team set their priority, and they also need to look. They also do a very strong examination and realistic examination of doing the SWOT analysis. That is their area of strength and also their area of weaknesses. And also, a point must be made that for a team to have a successful season in F1, it's not just about the quality of the driver that you got, Odoka, and this point has to be made. It's not just about the quality of the driver.
Yeah.
If you can't get 1,000 Lewis Hamilton in a car, in an Alpine, for example, they'll not be able to do much. I mean, it's just similar to what you see on Lagos roads here, or maybe on Nigerian roads, if you may. If you are driving, if you put a good driver in a correct, for example, now I have maybe a rookie driver in one of Land Rover. Of course, it's a no-brainer that the rookie driver will definitely dust the driver with a less superior car, and that's how it works in F1. In fact, it's 70-30 in terms of the quality of the driver compared to the quality of the cars. What that means is that for Ferrari, there was no magic they could have performed coming to 2025. There was no magic they could have performed because we are coming to 2025, as I said, with largely what we worked with in 2024. What means is that there were limitations in terms of the upgrade that teams could do to their car. They would just do one upgrade here and there, actually, at how to read the aerodynamics, not going into the technical details of the car. So what that means is that you have to just wait for 2026 for you to be able to do what you have to do. And that was why, if you listen to the announcement, even last season when the Hamilton was announced, the target is for next year, not for this year. So I will not rate them and I will not call it a disaster. But in terms of what will be the target for Ferrari and what will be the measure of performance for them this season, I don't think it would be realistic to say they are looking at second position. It won't be realistic because when you look at what has been in the first two races, it doesn't suggest a good season for Ferrari. So the car is good, especially when you look at the sprint and you look at their performance in the sprint race in China over the weekend, where they led to the qualifying for the sprint and also the sprint itself, where they seem to perform outstandingly well. And I listened to Hamilton after that sprint race, and I quite agree with him. Yes, this car has proven to be good in sprint, but this is a marathon. We are talking about 56, 57 lap race in China, for example. You go to Suzuka, where you are going to be doing more. So what's the strength of Ferrari to go on that lap? And we saw all the trouble they ran into. We saw how Max Verstappen dusted Charles Leclerc in natural race. And at the end of the day, we saw what happened to them as well. It doesn't look like it. So if Ferrari should finish in the top three, for me, I do think it has been a decent.
All right, we'll see where the Ferrari will get to finish this season, and hopefully it will be a good position And like you rightly mentioned, he said it will not be a failed project if they do not finish in the top 3 in the Formula One Constructors' Championship race. But yeah, we look forward to more races for the Ferrari and all other teams competing in the Formula One season this year. I'd say thank you very much, Asoli Wadeyemo, for joining us today, and we look forward to having you again. Hopefully, Lewis Hamilton will get on the podium in the next couple of races. Thank you very much for joining.